And so, we rejoin with Choshiro, still in Magaki's studio, fresh from defeating the Mad Painter. And now that we have a bit of a reprieve, we can now investigate the painting of the faceless woman further on the ground. And what's revealed to us is that moonlit garden that both Masaki and Haruka have visited. But it was only from the last chapter that we played as Choshiro that we found, via an unlocked memory, that he has been there as well. He managed to stumble out there when he was chasing Haibara, but instead of finding you, he found this faceless woman, and after that run-in, for some reason he did manage to forget that event ever happened. Now, considering what we know about Luna Sadada, could very well be one of these symptoms. Though that isn't to say that forgetting is always one of the sure signs. In the case of Magaki here, instead of forgetting, he was bestowed upon nothing but infinite visions of the ritual, the handmaidens, and the horrible despair that comes with the day of suffering, or day without suffering. But he did have an idea of how to cure Luna Sadada and, the horrible, inevitable outcome of it, and, well, his cure was death. The idea that, you can't spread it around if you are dead is indeed a possibility, but it's a pretty grim possibility. Sadly, that is the outcome of the island as we know by now. But it is interesting to think about the fact that possibly some of these sculptures might have not only been motivated by his visions of Sakuya, but also of the handmaidens in the ritual. Though, we don't need to worry about it at this point. Instead, we should probably go ahead and head down to the garden. It does appear that Yu is going to want us to take a slight detour before heading down there. Now, there is a very good reason why he would be heading over to the gallery. You might recall some of the key paintings that were hung up by Magaki in the gallery. Centerpiece of which we can see Yu Haibara standing in front of right now. Yeah, much like the painting on the ground, it is another portrait of the faceless woman from Magaki's visions. Next to the portrait, we are going to be able to find another entry into the black notebook of Yu Haibara. In it, we find him questioning, why Sakuya was in a coma, why his attempts to make a ceremony would fail, and why indeed she was in her comatose state, stuck between life and death. Seems that while he would wax upon these ideas, he would visit this painting in the hopes that maybe she would return and wake up from her coma. Just that inevitably, I think one day she did. Also inside, we do find a brand new key. And it is for a door we have seen before, under the basement of Rogutsu Hall. Just need to keep that in mind while we head over towards the garden. in addition to this painting, it's also worth checking out the picture of the handmaidens on this wall here. Where it does remind Choshiro of that scene that he found in the basement of the hospital. Might be another place worth checking out, though for right now, we should head to the moonlit garden. That wheelchair wasn't there before, was it? Well, it's probably fine. So it has definitely been a while since we have run to Kagiri here. I do not think this is Watashi. And, well, at this point, Choshiro, with the maxed out damage stat on the flashlight, makes quick work of her. Though after her defeat, she does leave behind a little bit of reading material, where she too goes over what she saw whenever she stumbled out into the garden after the failed ceremony. Yeah, she saw Sakuya out there as well, though instead of being frightened, she was feeling a sense of elation. It was her key to death, and considering that that's what she had been hoping for quite some time, it was a very welcome change for her. Also, strangely, she does mention going back to a beach, which, considering we're on an island, could be a location we could visit in the future. Also, speaking of Kagiri, there are a few optional places we can head to before heading down to the garden. The first of which is going to take us all the way back to Kagiri's room. Yeah, for the most part, Choshiro has never had any real reason to come over here. It's just that be hidden behind the curtain here is a pretty easily missed item. And while the name of this new camera function might sound impressive, it's actually a bit lackluster. If we take a quick look at it, we see that all it does is increase the amount of points you get from doing combos and damage as Choshiro, and I don't know, unless you're really needing to buy stuff from the store, points are kind of a moot point. So it's completely optional, and it's not really going to help or hinder your progression through the game. Next place we are going to want to head is back up to the 4th floor isolation ward. Though before we head down to the isolation room proper, it does seem like we are getting a call in the intercom system here. Yeah, just echoes of the past of Sakuya going into one of her fits of hysteria. And there is a little bit of reading material back here in the nurse's station. Yet another piece of information from the nurse that inevitably went insane looking after Sakuya. Just goes over the fact that, while she does know the name of the patient is Sakuya, for some reason every time she looks at her or thinks about her, she seems to completely forget anything about Sakuya. It's interesting that even almost in mid-thought, mid-sentence, the effects of Luna Sedata just kind of take over. And that's one of the things I can kind of appreciate with the way that the documents and everything are presented in this game. That even though you are kind of revisiting locations, you are continually getting layers and layers of the story, even though you, might have already progressed through an area multiple times. But yeah, as we did get that call on the intercom, don't see any reason why we shouldn't go ahead and head down to Sakuya's room. I mean, we did find a number of interesting pieces of notes and sliding block puzzles down here as Masaki, but it seems like a good idea that we did head down this way, as Yu Haibara seems to have made a visit down here. And just what might have you been doing down here in the place where his sister spent her final days? Well, in case you were wondering that, there is a helpful tape here from Yu Haibara himself, along with another entry into Sakuya's diary. This one seems to be a lot more coherent than the other diary entries that we have found. She goes over the fact that she found her mother's suicide note and why she committed suicide. She also goes over her curiosity about why Yu has changed. And also she goes over the fact that she's concerned about this mysterious child that seems to be under the effects of Luna Sedata, much like herself. She hopes that that child doesn't go the same fate as her. But by picking up these items, we do trigger another very simple ambush to take care of. The assistant and what I'm assuming to be the isolation ward nurse try to take us on, but yet again, after we found with Kagiri, so the early game enemies don't really stand much of a chance against Choshiro's upgraded flashlight. With their defeat, we do get another piece of reading material. In this case, it's the flashlight assistant that we just defeated. He goes over, the inevitable fate of anyone that looks over at Sakuya's face, seemingly, and that they just become increasingly enraptured with her. And he is a bit saddened that he cannot have the pleasure of looking at her face, and he tries, I guess, to go to the doctor's hidden room to have one final look at her before she is carted away to wherever she was hidden away. We still do not know where that is currently, though. And now that we have a bit of a moment, let's go ahead and listen to that tape that we found of Yu Haibara, see what he might have been thinking about. So with that tape, we hear another mention of the sadistic Ayako. And my general assumption is that the young girl that Sakuya mentioned being concerned about in that note we just found was indeed Ayako rather than Masaki. Now, there is a bit of fan theory regarding Ayako that is a bit skeezy, a bit incestuous. It's generally assumed that there's the possibility that Ayako was Sakuya's daughter, and that the bond between Sakuya and Yu went beyond a familial bond and went to a romantic bond. That they might have had some sexual liaison, and that unbeknownst to Yu, well, they did have offspring, and that offspring was Ayako. And that's why both that Sakuya had such an attachment to Ayako, but also why Ayako did have some traits of Yu, even though he only seemed to think of them, well, just in passing, not as the possibility of being directly from his loins. Bit fan theory-y, but there is the possibility. Before we can take the elevator down from the 4th floor isolation ward, we're going to have to take care of more nurses. I think these might be the nurses from both the 2nd and 3rd floor wards. Still, not that much of a challenge. Though I think there's really no way to avoid the grab attack they do once the elevator opens. But yeah, as with the other enemies we've defeated, these enemies do drop some notes as well. The duty nurse goes over the fact that Sakuya has been taken to the Morning Palace, and that she seems to be getting some rather odd treatment and care, though, yeah, the doctor, who I assume to be Yu Haibara, prohibits anybody from talking about Sakuya's treatment. She also goes over the very disturbing paintings of Magaki, how she knows one of the locations that his paintings takes place in, and that she feels it's a rather horrible omen for the future of the island. Instead of her going further into that, she seems to be cut off mid-sentence, as I assume that Sakuya kills her. But yeah, speaking of Ayako, we do want to take another quick detour down to her room. Nothing much down here story-wise, I'd say. Just need to take a quick snapshot of something new in her bed. With what I assume to be the final state of her, still in a living state of mind. Yeah, I think that is pretty much the culmination of Ayako's storyline. And it's also the end of any kind of optional things we need to do right now as Choshiro. Though we might as well take the hidden door here and make our way back down to the 1st floor. Though we definitely don't want to overlook this new item here on the ground. Which hits us with the random RNG, with sometimes picking up upgradable items. It's not always set whether or not, it'll be 5 blue crystals or 15 red crystals. Sometimes with, new caches of items, you could very easily just pick up 1 crystal. Though I guess it does kind of work out. We don't really need to upgrade Choshiro's flashlight anymore, and none of his lenses really requires, investing any points into. Yeah, it's a short hop, skip, and a jump over to the doorway to the moonlit garden. And thinking back on it, it's actually pretty convenient that the game is directing us out here to the garden, because considering that key that we got from the Black Notebook, we should just be able to take these stairs down here into the basement. Almost as if visions of the past are repeating themselves as Sakuya makes her way from the depths to attack Choshiro. And while her swooping attack is pretty damaging, thankfully it only has that one attack, and it also seems that she just does not have that much health at all. In fact, 3 fully charged shots defeats her. Which kind of makes me think that that wasn't really Sakuya. Instead, it was just some vision of Sakuya manifested from Choshiro's mind. Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell right now just where, the past that Choshiro had to deal with these harrowing visions of patients being overtaken by Luna Sadata and either being stuck in a endless stupor or dying straight on the spot, where those visions of the past intermingle and don't just overwrite possible hallucinations going on right now in the present. In the end, though, as long as there's some documentation of it, it might make things a little clearer. And it just so happens that Choshiro was pretty adamant about making sure to record all of his investigations on the island. Still, even with documentation, timelines can become hazy, memories can become distorted. It almost seemed like that recording should have been from a more recent excursion of Trushiro to the island, as he attempted to follow up on Yuhaibara. But what should have been an empty island instead was populated by patients still. Patients that still seem to be mimicking the events of that day without suffering. Still, for all that confusion, we are almost to the that underground door that we now have a key for. Oh, before we head down there, there is another item hidden away now in this dirty duty nurse's office. Along with that duty nurse's very disturbing spirit radio, you can also find another report from the duty nurse right here. In it, she goes over more about having to take care of the comatose Sakuya, and the fact that Sakuya has started to invade her dreams, that where there should be silence, instead she's starting to hear what could possibly be the lunar melody of Sakuya invading her mind. That where a door should normally be shut, now is swinging open to reveal a faceless woman. And then that faceless woman, well, is the last thing that she'll ever see. Also, while it does seem like a bug that there's now a cacophonous dirge going on inside this room, instead, I think it might be just the continuing recollections of the duty nurse and what possibly drove her insane. So once we leave that room, it does indeed stop, which is a very large benefit because, man, that is a horrible noise. But we have finally reached the door that we can now unlock, covered in these protective talismans. We did manage to make our way down to this door before, but now it's time to make our way inside. Definitely not as grandiose as I would have expected, locked behind so many talismans and with a hidden away key. Seems like nothing more than a set of cells and an altar. Now, as you can probably already tell from our filament, there are quite a few items hidden away in this very small area here. First of which is a single blue crystal, which is, as you might guess, not that impressive, but what's more impressive here is this document that we find on the altar. It's from a guard that had to look over what I'm assuming is this morning shrine. He goes over the very specific laws of the ritual, one of which is that, well, to stop blooming, you just cut off their face, but you can't cut off their face while they're still living. And that might have been one of the problems with taking care of Sakuya. As she was in a comatose state, well, they couldn't cut off her face to stop the blooming, but, well, we all saw what happened with that. She managed to just circulate out both extreme cold and extreme heat, and it seemingly caused the guard to go insane. He really, really wanted to cut off her face. And as we saw from the vision, Sakuya should have been in this cell right here.
Kirishima-san.
さやかさん、どうして？
その仮面のかけらをあの子に渡してください。大切なものです。
でも、ルカちゃんがどこにいるのか。
あの場所です。あなたが昔ルカを見つけた場所。もうあまり時間がありません。お願いします。
さやかさん。
霧島さん、またあなたに助けられましたね。
And with that ghostly vision, we get even more timeline confusion. Could have swore that Ruka did already have a vision of her childhood where someone that looked like Choshiro did give her a portion of a mask. I guess the question is, was it this portion of the mask? Because it doesn't seem like it. Still, Ruka's mom did tell us to go find Ruka and give that to her. Though there are a few last remaining items in this dungeon here. First of which is what I'm assuming to be the very final written words of Sakuya, for she, well, just completely bloomed. Nothing much we can get from that. Just that she was looking forward to seeing someone in the afterlife. Also, you might have heard it when I was trying to look for items in the cell, but yeah, we did uncover another item out here. Which we did manage to lose, but considering our luck so far, was probably just going to be one more blue crystal. But in case you were wondering about this other cell over here, in case there is anything of interest, well, indeed there is someone still locked away inside. Just have to make sure and line up the shot properly. Wouldn't want to ruin this Hazuki doll's mugshot. But yeah, as Ruka's mother mentioned, we do have to try to find her where we found her before, which should be in that moonlit cavern that is in the sub-basement underneath Haibara Hospital. And I guess the good thing is that we can now pretty easily get over there using that one hallway leading between the two buildings. So, it now appears that something tried to make its way out of the hole in the floor here. And I do apologize, much like I think one of the other pictures in the previous video, it does take a little bit of effort to make sure and grab this particular hidden ghost picture. And it's only made worse by the seemingly endless noise that you get assaulted by in here. I'd say the one thing that I could really recommend when trying to get this particular ghost is, well, you kind of have to get closer than you might think. Still, I do find it a bit interesting because I think inevitably what happened was that the duty nurse went insane and threw herself into this hole. And this is the final shot of her as she plunges deep into the darkness underneath the tunnels that we ran through before. Yeah, should be a straight shot now back up to the first floor, making our way to those very large double doors. Though we do need to stay on our toes, because suddenly out of nowhere, we have to run into the very deadly one-hit kill Sakuya. While it could be dangerous in these very tight situations, in the end, all you have to do is run to the first floor, and she's just as easily eluded as always. Now, you could always make the mistake of maybe trying to run towards the hallways leading up to the moonlit garden, but in that case, she does not break her following of you so easily. Definitely made that mistake before, trust me. But just to remind us that we are definitely on the right path, Yhaibarra continues to direct us where we need to go. And it's also interesting to me that, well, it almost seems like we're recreating the exact path that Yhaibarra took to save his sister Sakuya. Yeah, another extremely easy encounter with two old foes. And, well, honestly, we just don't have time for them, so pressing forward into the hospital. Should just need to get to the elevator and take that down to the sub-basement. Though it seems that it is not waiting for us here on the second floor. Well, I don't know. It just seems courteous to always answer a ringing phone. Just wouldn't seem right leaving it here ringing forever, would it? And we hear from a possible remorseful you, who finally was able to reunite with his sister, but by doing that, reuniting led to a much, much more horrible outcome for everyone on the island. I think one of the central dangers that are expounded upon by the story in this particular installment of Fatal Frame is that while it is good to have passion, it's definitely never a positive thing to have your passion blind you to just all the terrible things that might be going on around you. Sometimes it might just be too late before you realize what's going on. down in the moonlit cavern, we see another vision of the past along with a brand new enemy who, while I would say is visually creepy, almost imposing, he is sadly pretty easy. Not just in the sense that, Choshiro is, as I mentioned before, super powerful, but this particular enemy only has one real attack, and it's that weird little projectile attack he does, but it does such a small amount of damage that it's really kind of not even a threat.
お母さんに頼まれてきた。もう安心だ。これを。灰原！あの場所で待ってる。
Finally, though, we do see Yu Haibara, and I get the strong feeling that this game of cat and mouse is almost coming to a close.
Kirishima 鬼ごっこ結構面白かったな。でももう終わりだ。もう終わりにしよう。
So, as we chase Yu Haibara through the dirtied up hallways of the hospital, we can only think about the fact that while the characters of Choshiro and Yu are on pretty much polar opposites in regards to a moral spectrum, they do have quite a bit of similarities in regards to their passion and drive, in the fact that they almost get to the point where they, you could almost say they blind both individuals to the greater picture around them. Good thing is, at least for Choshiro, I think I know exactly where Yu Haibara is heading. And, well, I don't think it is a place he can very easily escape from. So, without further ado, it's time to capture Yu.
Haibara! どこだ?
もう鬼ごっこはおしまいだ。全部なくなるんだ。